Have you ever spent hours studying for an exam, closed your notebook feeling confident, and then a few days later realized you barely remember any of it? Not just the details, almost everything. At that point, most of us come to the same conclusion. Maybe I just have a bad memory, or I guess I'm not one of those people who can remember things easily. But what if forgetting isn't a sign that you're bad at learning? What if it's actually your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do? Because according to over a century of research, the reason you forget what you study has very little to do with intelligence, and almost everything to do with how memory actually works. And once you understand that, studying becomes a lot less frustrating. Most students think learning works like saving a file on a computer. You read something, you understand it, you store it, done. But your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain is constantly making decisions about what information is worth keeping and what information can be thrown away. Think about how much information you encounter every day. Conversations, social media posts, advertisements, random facts. If your brain stored all of it forever, it would quickly become overwhelmed. So instead, it does something smarter. It forgets. Forgetting isn't a bug, it's a feature. The problem is that your brain doesn't automatically know your exam is important. It only knows what you repeatedly prove is important. And that's where most study methods fail. In the late 1800s, a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus became obsessed with a question: how quickly do humans forget information? To find out, he spent years memorizing meaningless syllables and testing himself over different periods of time. What he discovered became known as the forgetting curve. The results were brutal. Without any review or reinforcement, most newly learned information disappears surprisingly fast. The biggest drop doesn't happen after a month. It happens within the first day. Your brain begins discarding information almost immediately, which explains why you can feel like you completely understand a topic today and struggle to recall it next week. But Ebbinghaus discovered something else that was far more important. Every time a memory is successfully retrieved, it becomes stronger. The forgetting curve starts flattening. The memory becomes harder to lose. And that single insight completely changes how effective studying should look. Let's talk about what most students do. They reread notes, highlight paragraphs, watch lectures again, and while doing these things, they often feel productive. The problem is that feeling productive and actually learning are not the same thing. When you reread a page you've already seen, it feels familiar. Your brain recognizes it, and recognition creates the illusion of mastery. Psychologists call this the fluency illusion. The information feels easy, so your brain assumes you've learned it. But during an exam, nobody asks whether the answer looks familiar. You either remember it or you don't. Research by Roediger and Karpik showed that students who repeatedly tested themselves remembered significantly more information than students who simply reread the material, even when the rereading group spent more time studying. In other words, the study method that feels harder is often the one that's actually working. The first solution is active recall. Instead of repeatedly putting information into your brain, active recall asks you to pull information out. After studying a topic, close your notes. Then ask yourself, what can I remember? No cheating, no peeking, no hints, just recall. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You suddenly notice all the gaps in your knowledge. But that's exactly why it works. Every successful retrieval strengthens the memory. Your brain learns that this information matters. And the more often you retrieve it, the easier retrieval becomes. The second solution is spaced repetition. Most students review information when they feel like it. Spaced repetition uses timing strategically. Instead of reviewing something 10 times in one day, you review it over increasing intervals. Maybe later today, then 2 days later, then a week later, then 2 weeks later. Each review happens right when forgetting is beginning. And every successful review pushes the forgetting curve further into the future. This is why tools like Anki have become so popular among medical students, engineers, and language learners. They automate this process, but you don't need special software. The principle matters more than the tool. Here's a practical system you can use immediately. Step 1. After studying, close everything and write down everything you remember. Step 2. Turn your notes into questions instead of statements. Step 3. Review those questions on a schedule rather than waiting until you forget everything. That's it. Simple, not easy, but incredibly effective. If there's one thing to remember from this video, it's this: your memory isn't broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It forgets information that doesn't get used. The good news is that memory isn't just about storage, it's about retrieval, and every time you force your brain to retrieve something, you make it easier to remember the next time. So after your next study session, don't reread your notes. Close them, and see what your brain can actually remember. You might be surprised by how much, and how little, you truly know.